Hello and welcome on into another edition of Dodgers Dawgs as part of the Dodgers Daily Network. My name is Austin Brubaker. It is my privilege to be able to join in here today to talk about some more Dodgers baseball. It's going to be a fun show that we're going to have. Talk a little bit about the game that we had and experienced yesterday because it was a fun and thrilling game yesterday. We'll get into a little bit of that discussion. It's going to be a fun show, interactive show with everybody in the crowd. We appreciate you all joining us today. But today, it's a little bit unusual because I think this is a pairing that, while we've been on shows together, I don't think it's been a one-on-one type of show with the both of us on the show. We have Coach Holt. Coach, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Austin. It's great to be on with you. I always mention you every time I'm on with Casey. You know, I'm just a hillbilly ball coach in Oklahoma. If I need analytics or something smart, I go to you and Casey. So I'm glad you're here to straighten me out and keep me in line with all your great knowledge of Dodger baseball on the farm and the major league. So great to be on with you.
Perfect. So I appreciate you joining on, Coach. Just to let things know, a little bit of behind the scenes, this is kind of my first time running both of us at the same time. So if there's any issues, particularly if there's any sort of audio issues that you are noticing that you're seeing, please let me know right away. We'll try to fix it as soon as we possibly can, and we'll be trying to fit this in a little bit together to try to make the show as good as we possibly can. Just continue to let you guys know behind the scenes type of stuff. Casey's still dealing with an illness right now. Both Coach and I are praying for Casey, as we are hoping that you guys are as well. He's going to be back soon as he possibly can be. We know, you've known Casey for, I actually don't know how long you've known Casey, but for quite a while, from the sounds of it, you've known him for quite a while. I've just known him for the past couple of years or so. He puts in an insane amount of work into this. So we're going to be doing our very best to just do a small part in living up to what he's built right now until he's able to come back. But our hearts, our thoughts are with Casey right now.
No doubt about it. I've known him since 8 or 9 years old. I had a nephew who passed away in 1991, was Casey's best friend, Casey's dad, Terry. Coached him in Little League ball here in Stillwater, so I've known Casey since he's 8 or 9 years old, his family. So you could say we go back a ways. And, of course, I coached him in American Legion, not Major League. I wish it was Major League Baseball, but American Legion baseball here in Stillwater. So we go way back. Love him and his family, and I can't wait to get him back on here. Yes, he has created something so awesome here with you and Coach Barakoff, Mark Watkins, all the people we have on the Dodger Dog Network. It's amazing what Casey's done there. And he also does, if you don't know, he does an O-State Daily, which is an Oklahoma State Daily thing, very similar to what he does here. So the guy is all dyed in the wool of Oklahoma State and the L.A. Dodgers, Dodger Farm Club, and it's his passion, and he does such a great job. And I just, I try not to let him down. Even though I was his coach, I'm a lot older than him. I always feel like I don't want to let him down. I'm on there with him. So I feel the same way towards you. I know how much you put into this too, Austin, all over the part of the country you're in, and I just don't want to let you guys down. So I'm here to do whatever you need me to do, and I love talking about the Dodgers.
Oh, and you do a great job, Coach. It is, with Casey, it is what drew me over to this, and we'll talk a little bit about this before we get into the Dodgers, because it's something where Coach and I really haven't had a whole lot of conversation just one-on-one to be able, besides about the Dodgers. So we might do a little bit of a sidetracked type of thing before we get started with the Dodgers. With Casey, what drew me to it was just his grace and strive to go after and cover particularly the players at the minor league system. And really, it was the players that nobody was really talking about. Casey does an incredible job, and it continues to do an incredible job looking out for every single player that has even a small amount of success in the system. Guys like, and I'm just thinking of guys off the top of my head, guys like a Frank Rodriguez or a Max Hewitt, or other guys within the system, a Jason Cabrera, or a Antonio Knowles, or a lot of these different guys that might not be at the top of different prospect lists, but have had different moments of success. Casey treats them the exact same way as he would a player that a Josue de Paula or a Zaire Hope, or guys that are incredible and deservedly so get a lot of spotlight, but not so as much as some of these other guys. And that sort of grace and that sort of hard work to be able to provide that coverage really was something that kind of drew me to that. And it was fun because he kind of reached out to me. I don't even remember at some point, but it was because I was going to a lot of these games in Great Lakes, and that passion, that obsession, you could call it, with watching the Great Lakes Loons baseball and starting to fall in love with the organization. He was able to see that a little bit. Started off with me just filming a little bit on the side when I was at some of these games for him, and eventually allowed him, or he trusted me enough to be able to put me in a spotlight. I believe leading up to a trade deadline 2 years ago, we did a live show. That was my first live show, and really one of my first times interacting with him. He's just an incredible individual. I know we're missing a lot of the videos and stuff that he posts as far as the guys in the system. I have no idea how he has all the time to be able to do that, and the cover Oklahoma State and all of that different stuff. His work ethic is unreal with what he's able to do and to provide all the different coverage that he does for those guys. So we're going to just try to do a little bit of a small part in that, going off a little bit in the side direction, because we're going to transition a little bit to the Dodgers. But I'm kind of curious, because I don't think this is something that we talk about a whole lot. What kind of initiated your fandom within the Los Angeles Dodgers, and what was that thing that kind of made you grow up to become somebody that now is contributing to a Dodgers podcast and part of the Dodgers Daily Network?
You'll love this. I sound like your grandpa talking. They're calling on the Dodger Dogs, and I just turned 67 years old, so I was the youngest of 5 children. I had 3 older brothers. Next to the oldest one was a big Dodger fan. My brother Randy, was a big-time Dodger fan. But I go back to my brother Randy and Rex and my brother Ron and I. We go back in the 60s. I mean, I can remember, we lived in a little small town, southern Oklahoma, right on the Oklahoma-Texas border, and going to the store and getting that newspaper and read the box scores. I mean, of course, the Dodgers it was always a day late because if they play on the West Coast, but it didn't matter. I was a baseball junkie. We saw one game a week. It was Tony Kubek and those, Kurt Gowdy, those guys on Saturday baseball. So I just love baseball, and I became a Dodger fan probably 8 or 9 years old. That's the only time I've ever been to Dodger Stadium. I think I was 9 years old, which has been 1967. So I go way back on that deal, but it started with my brother, and it just continued. I've always had that love of baseball. I always wore number 5 because I love Johnny Bench, even though I hated the Reds with a passion, because they always beat the Dodgers. The Dodgers won 100 games one year, didn't even get in the playoffs because the Reds won 104. But I hated the Reds, but I love Johnny Bench because he's a quarter Choctaw Indian from Oklahoma, and that's the same as me. That's where the similarities ended, obviously. He's a Hall of Fame, one of the greatest catchers of all time. But so I'm just a baseball junkie, Austin. I love baseball, but as always, number 1 was the Dodgers. Now, I grew up on the Texas border, like I told you. So for a lot of times, the only time games we'd ever get was Houston Astros on Sunday, maybe on my black and white TV, get the Astros. That's before the Rangers came in. So this tells you how old I am. It's before the Rangers were even a thing. So I was a Houston Astros fan years ago. Can't stand them now. For all of us Dodgers feel the same way for obvious reasons. But I do go back. I am a Texas Ranger. But right behind the Dodgers, I'd put the Texas Rangers. And after that, I probably went to the St. Louis Cardinals because Matt Holliday was one of my former players. So and they were close. There's a lot of Cardinal stuff. Used to be Cardinals in Oklahoma, and I love the thought that the AA and AAA, the Dodgers in the state of Oklahoma now. You kidding me? Guys like Casey and my brothers, we can go to Tulsa, an hour that way, or Oklahoma City's an hour that way to see these AA and AAA guys. But to answer your question, which I tend to get off sometimes, 8 or 9 years old, my older brother got me started on it. I was a baseball junkie, but I was always a Dodger. I remember me and my brother Rex had Dodger 8x10s when we went to Dodger Stadium. We got some 8x10s. I'll go some names here: Bill Singer, Wes Parker. I mean, this is way back. There's some people on here probably know what I'm talking about. We had those pictures all over our bedroom because that's what you did in the 60s. We just ate it up. We played, home run derby out in the yard with rolled up socks. It didn't matter. Gunny sacks for bases, played baseball. Baseball has just been in my blood, and the Dodgers have been at the top of that blood. So hope I didn't get off there too much, but great time to be alive as I look back. Great memories of my childhood of playing true sandlot ball with my buddies there at Randolette, Oklahoma. Once you get 3 outs, you drop the glove because the other guy's going to use the same glove when he gets out there because we didn't have enough gloves to go around. And great memories of my friends and I just playing baseball and the love of the game. I've never lost that. That's what I always talk about, the analytics part. I know you are so good at that, all this stuff that goes on now, even when I coached. The analytics part is amazing. On the love of the game and feel when I was managing or coaching, feel for, what you need to do. Don't get me wrong, I liked a good book full of spray charts when I was a high school coach, and I wanted a notebook on every team we played full of spray charts. And that's basically what we did there in scouting reports today, that type of stuff. And baseball has changed so much in that end that you're very good at, the analytics, you and Casey and a lot of other people that I'm not good at, but love of the game is just there. It's been there, like I said, I guess 60 years. Look at 60 years being a Dodger fan right at that. So I guess you could say I'm a lifer. I guess I'm never going away as far as loving the Dodgers.
Oh no, that's incredible, and just knowing just how much baseball can really inspire people from a really young age. It was a little bit of a different path for me. I guess you could say kind of early on. With all the analytical stuff or all the nerd type stuff, as people would say, I was into that stuff when I was 6, 7 years old. My mom could tell stories of me. So I moved back to the state of Michigan when I was 6 and 7. This was 2006. This is pre-Dodgers baseball for me. I'm not from California, didn't really have any connections to the Los Angeles Dodgers, but my connection was to the Detroit Tigers. I have generations of Tigers fans within my family, so that there will always be a soft spot and a fandom for the Detroit Tigers as a result of that. But 2006, the Tigers went on a run and ended up going to the World Series 3 years after losing 119 games. And as I was 6 and 7 years old, starting to get baseball cards and stuff, but I would literally quote baseball statistics to my parents and let them know about Carlos Guillen having a 320 batting average and Craig Monroe having 27 or 28 home runs. I don't remember which one it was. But all those different statistics and stuff, I was quoting that at very much an early age. Next year following that, 2007, is obviously the introduction of the Great Lakes Loons to the surrounding city that I was living in at the time. And that started with that connection to the Los Angeles Dodgers. You go fast forward a few years, and then all of a sudden, I'm starting to go to a lot of these Great Lakes Loons games, and I'm not doing it at the home games. I'm doing it at the road games, and I'm going to South Bend as I've been going this past week. I'm going to Fort Wayne, going to Grand Rapids and Lansing, all these different cities, and going to cheer on the Loons because that was one of my childhood teams, and started to gain connections because it turns out that there's not a whole lot of people that travel an hour plus to go to the minor league games to cheer on the road team in particular. Just not something that you see too terribly often, although I'm seeing that starting to change a little bit, particularly with Loons fans, and just started to gain more and more connections within the organization. And just to see how great people are in the organization has been absolutely phenomenal, and the community that the Dodgers fans have is second to none. It is absolutely phenomenal, the Dodgers culture that they've been able to create. And it really helps because the Dodgers team is really good. They have a really good team. Obviously, we're going to talk a little bit. This is the transition, a pretty good transition into Dodgers baseball. The team is not necessarily complete right now. Obviously, we've seen a whole lot of different injuries, particularly on the pitching side, has really, really made a huge impact on what they are able to do and perhaps limited them in some ways in being able to win certain games. But we'll go into a little bit of what happened in the game yesterday in just a minute, but because it's been a week and a half or so since you've last been on, what have you noticed over the past either week and a half or just on a season-wide total from the Dodgers team? What are some of your main takeaways as far as things that are either positive or things that might be a little bit concerning to you?
The positive, Austin, still in first place or right there at the top of the toughest division in baseball with all the things they've gone through. But this is nothing new. We've seen this. I'll always refer back to 2 years ago. Dodgers, lost the entire starting rotation, that sort of thing. And the resiliency of the organization, not just the players, the managers, the coaching staff, from the minor leagues on up and to the front office. The positive is the resiliency of that. And again, here we are again. We've lost the most pitchers of anybody in the major leagues again this year, starters and relievers. Here we go again. So here's the Cats from Oklahoma City rolling up, and and they're giving quality. You can see them getting better. They're getting quality innings. The players, Dalton Rushing being called up, letting two of the mainstays of the Dodgers, and Chris Taylor, and just let them go, because of Rushing
and Kim, yeah.
And Kim, yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember his name right there. I said I kept going, which one? Yeah. But Kim, they couldn't be sent down. Casey and I had talked about the Dodgers made a very tough decision on those two situations, but it's the right decision. I guess the positive is I never, I'm sitting around like every other fan. I get pissed off. Things don't go the right way. Want to blame whoever. That's the way it is. I was a coach. Everybody blame me too. I get it. It's part of the job. So it's part of the job being a fan too. But I trust the Dodger organization. They've earned that trust. We won it last year and won it in 2020, but they've earned the trust by sticking to their game plan. Great example is Max Muncy. We're already, there's people ready to get rid of him. The guy's got 9 home runs since April 30th, had 2 last night, and you can see it, whatever the glass is, whatever it is. The guy was working hard to try to get back. There's a lot of whatever the reason may be, but 230. He's a lifetime. I looked up today just so I wouldn't sound stupid. He's 228 in his lifetime. So we're seeing the Max Muncy. We need him to be a run producer. That guy is coming on, but they stuck with him. That's the whole thing. Everybody's ready to throw him away. Like last year with Gavin Lux. They stuck with him. He was our best hitter for a while, second part of the year. So the positive of it is the Dodgers' resiliency and their ability to stick to it, stick to their game plan. It's worked. They know it works, and go from there. We were honest, negatives. Negatives going to be injuries, but that's nobody's fault. That's kind of like the weather. I learned a long time ago as a coach. I didn't worry about injuries or weather unless I had something to do with it. I usually didn't have anything to do with any of that. If I was an idiot and pitched a guy who had a bad arm, you could blame me. But for the most part, injuries, weather, it's stuff you have no control over. So the negatives to me is just, again, we're dealing with major injuries. But again, there's nobody to point the finger at it. Well, again, like I've told Casey, we've talked about, you probably have too, that's a whole series of podcasts. If you want to start talking about arm injuries in baseball, and it ain't just the LA Dodgers. It starts down with 13-year-olds. So yeah. I'm not smart enough to get into that. I don't want to get into that. But I'm just saying the negatives that we're dealing again with major, injury issues. But the positives, I got total trust in them because they've earned that, and they've proven they can still have major success, overcoming that.
Yeah, I totally agree with a lot of those. With the injury talk, it is something that obviously is very obvious that the Dodgers are dealing with a ton of injuries. When you lose some of your top starting pitchers again, when you felt like that you had a surplus of starting pitchers, that you wouldn't even really have to worry about this because you were intentional about going and getting too many relievers so that you didn't have to spend it at the trade deadline. And right now we're at the point of having some question marks with some of these guys. I think we all feel confident in Yoshi Yamamoto and what he's going to be able to do. All of this is assuming the guys that are healthy are going to stay healthy, obviously. There is some concerning track records just based off of innings history or guys just coming off of injury recently, because a lot of the other guys that are part of the rotation, Dustin May, Tony Gonsolin, Clayton Kershaw, coming off of injuries and haven't pitched to the level of innings in quite a while. So there certainly is some question mark and stuff with that. It was actually kind of curious because we got a comment on one of the most recent videos asking to do a little bit of a deep dive comparing the Dodgers organization and just the number of injuries compared to other organizations. That might be something that I do a little bit in the off season. It's not something that I can really do right now, only because there's not a easy place to be able to find that, and my fear is I might have to go through all of the different injury reports for all of the different guys and be able to find that out, and that might take a little bit of time to be able to do that. Nonetheless, the Dodgers are dealing with a lot of injuries, and I think, as you mentioned, I think it in part has to do with a lot of the pitchers that they target. They look for those high velo, high stuff guys because those are the guys that are the most effective or correlate with some of the most success and can get some of the most swing and miss stuff, which if you're a Dodgers organization, your one goal is to win in October. And if those are the guys that are going to help give them the best chance to win in October, that is the guys that they're going to pursue. So do you foresee any sort of changed into any sort of that philosophy, or do you see the Dodgers organization, as they've done and as you have mentioned, they've stuck with some players, they've stuck with what they've done with players like a Max Muncy, continuing to go and put him out there, and now Max Muncy is 20% better than league average as a bat. You look at his WRC plus numbers, which a little bit more of an advanced statistic, but something that is very, very, very noticeable across the league. Do you see, as a pitching side, as far as the pitchers that they could potentially target, any sort of change of philosophy from what they've seen, or do you think that there's really not any sort of good answer to any of this, and you're just going to deal with the injuries as they come and hope you have enough depth as an organization?
I don't think we'll see a change there, and the reason being, if you look down through, you look down through the injury report. There's some guys return, when they're going to return 2026, or you'll see after the All-Star break. We've got a few that are coming back, can possibly come back in June. Still remains how they're going to use Ohtani. I saw the other day somebody mentioned him as a closer. That might be nice to see, but it'd be better on his arm. But what I don't know if you want to use him in a closer role. I think he'd be more of a starter because that's what he's done. But so he's getting closer. The names right off the bat. I look at that quite often. Now, there's several guys that are looking in June, or right at the All-Star break or right after. So I think they're still going to stick with it. The trading, I think they'll stick with what they've done in the past. With that being said, they have gone out and got guys at the trade deadline. Last year, the Dodgers won the preseason. They won the trade deadline as far as the big leagues, of the moves they made. And they wouldn't have, I think we all agree, they wouldn't have won the World Series out Flaherty.
No.
And Tommy Edman, I don't think there's any doubt. So that's what I go back to what I said earlier about they've earned that respect and that belief, and they're going to do the right thing. I still see them, they're probably going to do something at the trade deadline and make a move there. They got people that are working on that constantly, the front office people. I don't think there'll be a big changer at this point. I am like you, but they're not stupid. They know they've got a bunch of arm injuries. We're not telling them anything they don't know. They're trying their best, to overcome it. And I'm sure they've got a plan. Me and you've got a plan A, maybe a plan B. They got a plan A, B, C, and D, and just keep on going down the line. They've got an idea what they want to do. They still got some cats maybe in the minor leagues that's still going to get a shot. And the good thing is 2 years ago that was so exciting that the Dodgers were still able to win the division by 14 games, bringing all these guys up, the Gavin Stones of the world, the Emmett Sheehan, all those guys come up, and not only were they in there when it was close, they had it was meaningful innings. It wasn't 14 when they got up there. It ended up being a 14-game lead at the end. And then last year, off the charts as far as the intensity, right up to the last game, the last series with the Padres, the first series with the Padres. In my opinion, was the second best team in baseball last year.
No doubt about it. Yeah,
I don't think there's any doubt about it. They were a great team, and the Dodgers that set them up for their deal. So the pressure, there was a lot of kids that had to perform last year too, and they did it in a tense situation when it's a race, when the race is on, and I think it's what we're going to see this year. The division is loaded, great teams, great managers, great players. Our division is crazy, but wouldn't have it any other way. It just makes you better, and it makes you better prepared. So if you play anybody else, you're better prepared for that. But I don't think you'll see a big change in their attitude or their club policies, if you will, with the pitching staff. I think they're already planning. They're way ahead. I'm sure Austin is, the people they've got in the office are doing the work. The guys who are behind the scenes that we don't even know who they are doing stuff. They're well prepared. And again, I've got all the trust in the world with them because they've earned that. And I'm not the only one who feels that way. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out, or I wouldn't have been able to do it. I promise you. But so I feel good about that, and I think they'll stick with it. But I can see a trade deadline deal, and you always, even as a coach, just a high school American Legion coach, you always had good surprises and bad surprises. In other words, you got a guy you're really counting on, you really got high hopes, and just doesn't pan out for whatever reason, injury, whatever it may be. But then you also got that guy that, you didn't have a lot of, he wasn't quite ready, you thought, or you didn't have a lot of hopes. Then that guy shows up, and he's one of your best players, or he's a key to your success. So I think even the major league level, we've seen that already with the Dodgers, some other teams. I think that's still after. That's the exciting part. Who's going to be that guy this year? Who's going to be the guy, or maybe more than one guy? Those young pitchers that all of a sudden you see them just getting better every time they're getting out there. We already see a little bit of a couple of them and getting better and better, and then they're the surprise, or maybe Dalton Rushing's up there. He's backing up Will. That's going to be important in the dog days hit.
Mm-hmm.
When all the heat gets there and Will's hitting 320, 330, whatever he's hitting now, he's going to have more days off. And it's great they can do that with Dalton Rushing now. He can kind of get his feet wet and be ready for those dog days to spell him off. So the great organization doing great things.
Yeah, it's a great organization doing great things. As you had mentioned, we've already seen a little bit because there's been opportunity presented of itself. We've seen guys step up, particularly in the bullpen, the two guys that people are going to point to that didn't really have any sort of major league experience going into this upcoming season, although Ben had a little bit of experience at the very end of last year, is Ben Kasparius and Jack Dreyer. Yep. Jack Dreyer, I guarantee you, would not have gotten an opportunity at the major league level, at least initially, if it was not a result of the injuries, and we would not see just how good he has been at the big league level if it wasn't for this opportunity. Now, that's not to say we don't wish for those injuries to occur, but those are things that happen through the course of the season, and there is a little bit of good news with the Dodgers as far as the injury side. Perhaps they're going to get two of their high-leverage right-handed relievers back, potentially by the end of the week. It seems to be the reports talking or hearing some things on X from guys like Fabian Ardaya, who are close to the organization, to the team. There's a good chance that a Michael Kopech, who has been rehabbing in Oklahoma City, has been struggling quite a bit, especially with his command down there, but still, he was a guy that the Dodgers acquired during the trade deadline last year, and we saw just how good he was at the big league level in a Dodgers uniform last year. He is somebody that could be coming back to the organization because he spent a lot of time rehabbing in Oklahoma City. And then another guy that could be potentially back by the weekend, and this is surprising to me, is Kirby Yates. Kirby Yates, it hasn't gone through the rehab start, but is somebody that the organization feels confident enough in right now, or at least they're going to wait to see what happens after tomorrow. I believe he threw a bullpen at Dodger Stadium today, and they're waiting to see how he responds to that tomorrow before potentially bringing him along on the road trip. You do have a couple of roster spots or guys that are filling in for the roster right now that you did not anticipate being there at the start of the season. The Dodgers this past week, and he pitched during the game just briefly yesterday, brought in a guy by the name of Jose Urena, big league veteran type guy. They signed him to a big league deal. More of a stopgap, fill in some innings type of guy would be my assumption of what he is. Same thing with a guy that they just brought up to fill in some innings. They've sent him up and down a little bit. Ryan Loudis is currently on the big league club. They have Lou Trevino, who has been successful so far this season. He's another one of these guys that could potentially, depending on who's available and who's healthy, you could see what exactly they're going to do with that. And so they do have some options to be able to play with. So there's a little bit of good news with that. Obviously, Emmett Sheehan has started his rehab, and his most recent appearance looked really, really encouraging. To get him back would be a really solid thing. But you're starting to see some of these pieces come together, and we'll get into the other potential injury news in just a minute. But as far as the reports for some of the pitching is concerned with some of the injuries that you have, just how encouraged should Dodgers fans be now that some of the guys might potentially be coming back, and what should Dodgers fans expect from these guys, and it's particularly with a guy like a Michael Kopech? Should they be thrust into lower leverage situations to get them back on their feet? Or just how quickly is there going to be a need to put them in the high leverage situations that we know that they are capable of, but haven't pitched in quite a while?
One thing about it, the Dodgers, in spite of everything, and what we just talked about, all the injuries they had for the pitching staff, they're still staying right at the top of the division. So you're not, all of a sudden this is the toughest part of their schedule thus far. The teams they're playing quality teams every night. So this is a challenging time of the year, if the Dodgers can continue to lead the division, be right there at the top of the division, you don't have that my hair's on fire deal. You don't have that, that panic in you as far as an organization going, well, now we got to get these guys back. So I think you can kind of work them in. The Kirby Yates, his was a hamstring, wasn't that correct?
I believe so. I believe so.
His arm's good, but I think it's a hamstring,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. I think I saw the day he's just keeping his arm in shape while his hamstring or one of the quad or something was healing up. So that's good news. And he was nails when the season first started. So getting him back, as you mentioned, Kopech and some of the other guys, Ohtani's still lurking out there. He's working himself back, and at some point we will see him this season. So the fact you're still the top of the division, you don't have to. I don't think you have to quote unquote rush anybody into anything. I mean, at this point, I don't think the Dodgers would be in panic mode anyway. I don't think they dropped out 3 or 4 games and go into panic mode. They don't have any reason to, because if you can continue, the offense is still showing signs of getting better. Not just Max Muncy but Freddie Freeman is on a pace to be the MVP again. I mean, it's unbelievable what Freddie's done at the plate, and it's every night. It's every freaking night he's getting 2 or 3 hits. So, we all love the guy. I loved him when he was in Atlanta. I love him even more now. And we all know we could talk about it, make a whole show about Freddie and what he's meant to baseball in general, especially the Dodgers. But so you're seeing the offense get some improvements. I was one is yelling for getting Conforto in there, and and he's still in there every day. He's struggling a little bit. That's a guy we really need to see start coming around. We talked that way about Muncy and Pages at one time. Pages has turned into a stud all of a sudden. I know he's probably they're getting a book on him, quote unquote, the book, and figured him out. But he's turned into a good major league hitter. That's a guy who we sit there and watch kind of do some struggling. Conforto's been a good hitter in his career. I mean, he's not a 300 hitter, but he's a good major league hitter. And again, it goes back to the same thing. The Dodgers are sticking with him. So, I think the things you'll see moving forward, there's a lot of good news for the pitching staff. I don't think it's too early in the year. It really is still to rush anybody, but I think that they've always shown the ability to treat these guys right, to get them back, after an injury. So, Kopech, I'm sure he's going to get some more chances down. If he'd come in, I wouldn't think he'd be a high leverage guy if he'd been struggling on the AAA level. Kershaw's back. Bless his heart, he's probably should have had a couple of wins. Things hadn't gone his way. He hadn't been dominant, but he's pitched good enough to get a win and hadn't got one. A couple of situations. So, it's good to have that veteran not only on the mound but in the dugout, in the clubhouse with your young kids. So that's invaluable for the Dodgers too.
Yeah, it is invaluable. And yesterday, obviously, with the game that Kershaw was in, he had the wild pitch in the first that ultimately led to the run that he had given up. That's a mistake that with Kershaw, you'd want to have back. You also had the error with Max Muncy that didn't lead to earned runs, but led to 2 additional runs that ultimately the Dodgers had to come back in. Max Muncy, during the game yesterday, hit his second home run of the game in what was a majestic blast to put the Dodgers to tie the game with the Mets, and then they were able to eventually walk it off in extra innings. Just phenomenal. And it was great to see Tanner Scott go out there and have some success after really struggling over the past little bit, or at least not dominating to the degree of which we know Tanner Scott is capable of, put into some high leverage situations, and just with the location of his pitches, leaving too many pitches down or in the middle of the zone, just hasn't been able to really execute a whole lot. He was able to execute, and it sounds like there might be a little bit of mechanical things that they saw with Tanner Scott that they've been working on with him. It might have found some of the things on his lower half, some of the pitching coaches and stuff, that might lead to a little bit better execution and more of what we saw of yesterday. I think it was phenomenal to see him go out there, get that, and have some success during not just the bottom part of the Mets lineup, but against Juan Soto, against Pete Alonso, both of them striking out with the runner in scoring position due to the extra innings rules, and then to get out of that jam. And then for the Dodgers to go out there, and for the team, it really has, on an offense, become a really good unit. You had mentioned Andy Pages and the growth that he's had. He's somebody that I've been actively rooting. If you look at a lot of the tweets and stuff that I put out there, especially of the Dodgers, one player that I particularly go out and highlight is Andy Pages. And the reason I don't do that is not to say I knew that Andy Pages was going to be super good. The reason why is because I think he's one of the most crucial guys for the future of this team and for the future of this organization, because I believe there needs to be young talent that is emerging, and I knew just how good he was down at the minor leagues, and I knew if he could tap into those skill sets, he could just be absolutely phenomenal. And you've seen him transform his game a little bit and done a lot of different things, but particularly in a lot of clutch situations, be able to not necessarily go and get that home run each and every single time. Was close on Monday, I believe it was, to center field, but go out and get those base hits. Be content with getting the single the opposite way to put the Dodgers within one, as he did, I believe, in extra innings on the game on Monday. There's a lot of different elements to his game that have been exciting. Michael Conforto obviously has been disappointing this year so far, but, and I think this is crucial because this ties it back within the pitching right now. I don't believe Michael Conforto is the Dodgers' number one priority towards fixing this team. Meaning, I don't think if Michael Conforto was fixed, all of the team's problems as far as October baseball go away. I think the main concern for the Dodgers going forward, and as we enter into June, and as July is going to be quickly approaching, and as you mentioned, potential trade deadline coming up, the biggest thing that the Dodgers are doing right now is their pitching is kind of on hold right now. There's a reason why they're bringing on a lot of different stopgap guys. It's to provide some innings, to try to wait to see when guys are going to be able to come back and get healthy. And when we're talking about different pieces, different ways to be able to improve this team, the first thing that they have to do and the first thing they have to check is to see the health status of a lot of their pitchers, to see where they are at and who they actually are going to get and need for October. And that's going to be the first thing that they should and need to address prior to doing anything with a Michael Conforto, who at the very least has been able to draw some walks. What do you think about as far as the needs for the Dodgers? Do you agree that it's going to be they're kind of in a wait and see mode for where their pitching is at, and that's going to be priority number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 during the trade deadline coming up?
I don't think there's any doubt about it. You nailed it right there. It kind of goes back to what I was saying about there's no panic at this point. They're keeping their head above water. You know, if the Dodgers had lost 10 in a row, we'd be having a different conversation right here. But it still goes back to the same thing. Conforto is not the biggest problem right now. We know Tommy Edman is just going to get better and better. He's coming off an injury. He's working himself back in it. Mookie's going to get better. I don't think we've even approached that. You know, the guy lost 25 pounds. I could lose 25, nobody'd notice. That guy didn't have 25 to lose, you know. So, you know, even though he just had a broken foot or something, whatever.
The fractured toe.
Yeah, fractured toe. So, you know, he's not at 100%. Freddie's not at 100%. Who cares? He's Superman, you know, and Ohtani's a freak of nature. So, you know, the Dodgers have some ability to do some things. As you mentioned, we know Tommy Edman's going to get better. I mean, and Max Muncy's already getting up to where his career's at. You know, 230, 240 be a run producer. And as you mentioned, his numbers are very good at this point, you know, whatever the reason may be. So I totally agree with you on that. Conforto, it's nice to have it. Back to your mind, you got a veteran guy who's been a proven major league hitter. It's not, you know you've got that. It's not like you're bringing I'll bring up James Outman. He was the kind of guy we were all pulling for James Outman too. Big, strong kid. You want to see his, plugging away, and it's kind of the same thing. You know, they stuck with him for a while, but they didn't couldn't stick with him, whatever the case may be. Conforto has already proven he can hit on the major league level. You know, so I think he's got a little longer rope with him than maybe a young kid that comes in and struggles. So, but you hit it right on the head. Number one, it was last year. I always bring up the thing. Who in the heck ever thought you could throw a bullpen game in a freaking World Series, or actually in the playoffs when you're down 2-1 on the road?
Yeah, and an elimination game.
Elimination game against a great team on the road, and you throw a freaking 2-hit shutout. This is off the charts of baseball. Never been done. The Dodgers are doing it. So, like I said, that goes the trust factor again. You know, the bullpen games. When you look at the Dodgers and their bullpen, I don't know what the other team's doing. I don't care. They're probably doing it too, but the Dodgers' recent history of bullpen games, Yeah, some of them got ugly after that one against San Diego. There was a couple of us that wasn't very pretty, but the reason was, as me and Case talked about, I'm sure you guys did too. It wasn't because you wanted to; it's because you had to.
Yeah.
It's kind of where they went to. They still have some games now. So no, you're absolutely correct. Getting the staff moving forward, setting your staff up, your starters, your relievers. I mean, it goes back to old school: short relievers, long relievers. Your high leverage guys, your closers, whatever the role is of these guys. That's job one. That's the priority one, because even on a bad day, the Dodger offense can be devastating, in time. So, especially with Pages coming on and Muncy coming around, and like I said, Freddie just being a Freddie, MVP Freddie, whatever. So the offense, even on their bad days, are still dangerous. So the pitching staff is the key to the whole thing. Always is. We got lucky last year. It wasn't even bad weather. It used to always be, great pitching was always going to win the World Series because it's snowing in Boston or New York, and it's 20 degrees, playoff game. It wasn't a dome stadium, because hitting is going to be tough during that time of year in October. It always has been. And so it's still kind of the same thing, even with the dome stadium here and there. You're still going to have pitching is going to win when it comes right down to it. The things you can do, and the Dodgers proved that last year. I mean, the Padres are getting ready to knock them out. They're celebrating. Already got the champagne on ice out there, and I hear they're doing a bullpen game. Oh hell, we got this. Didn't work out that way, and the Dodgers just took off from there on an amazing run, as we know at this point. So, I know they've got plan A, B, C, D, E, and F on down the line. They're ready for it. Still in first place or out there at the top, and getting that pitching staff, whoever it may be, maybe somebody get the trading deadline like we did last year, which I wouldn't be shocked to get a leverage guy there. The Dodgers have the ability to do it. They got the right people in the organization to evaluate that type of stuff. They were wanting Tommy Edman while he was hurt. I mean, they're just waiting on the guy to get it. Hey, we're getting ready to get him, Anybody else could have got him too, but, it's kind of like, we talked about Kirby Yates. I had a bunch of my friends say, hey, Dodgers, man, just going to buy a championship. And the season started, I'm sitting there going, well, hell, anybody could have got Kirby Yates. Why didn't you get him? He wasn't a $700 million man. He was a heck of a pitcher. So the Dodgers also wasn't just the big splash moves, which you all know they did. They made great moves up and down the line they have for several years. So I'm all in.
Yeah, I very much am all in right now, as is the people in the chat right now. We want to thank everybody who's joining in the crowd with us. The Dodgers Dawgs is part of the Dodgers Daily Network. Thank you very much for joining us. Justin Lamas, Craig Osterberg, Al Minerva. We have Vin 1988 with some great comments and stuff in here. Cobra Commander. Craig Osterberg again with a good comment. Conforto, he states, has about 2 months to figure it out. 1 more month of a trial. That's probably fair. They'll probably extend the leash as long as they possibly can.
Yep.
The last show that I did, I talked about different possibilities, particularly when it comes to different rumors that the Dodgers are exploring potentially a left-handed bat to come off the bench. And certainly you can find different guys, left-handed bats, to come off the bench. There could be different options that they could go to. If they wanted to jump the gun with that, I don't think the immediate move is immediately Michael Conforto, because I don't think they necessarily have to make that move yet.
Nope.
There could be a potential possibility, and this is something that I threw out there only because I think it deserves at least a conversation by people. There's a guy down at AAA level, which I know that the Dodgers organization is, if given their track record with calling up some of these guys, probably is not going to be something where they call them up. But there's somebody who's breaking records for Oklahoma City right now with his power and his ability to drive in runs, and that's Ryan Ward.
Yeah.
If you're talking about somebody who deserves to get an opportunity at some point, and if you're looking for a potential left-handed bat to come off the bench, and if you ever get to a point, and I'm not saying that the Dodgers are at this point, although we've seen the organization surprise us a little bit with moving off of some of these guys, if they ever get to a point to where they are ready to move off of a guy like a Miguel Rojas who's on the bench. Talking about your bench right now being a Dalton Rushing, Kike Hernandez, Hae-Sung Kim, all of those guys I think are sticking at the big league level, at least for right now. The fourth guy on that bench is Miguel Rojas, who has been struggling this year. If you're wanting to move off of him, I think you probably have enough coverage at shortstop with Mookie Betts, with Tommy Edman, with Hae-Sung Kim. I think you have enough guys that have the ability to play shortstop, and you have an Alex Freeland down at the minor leagues to where if there's a long-term injury to a Mookie Betts, God forbid, you could call up a player like an Alex Freeland to fill in long-term. But if they were to replace somebody, and if they wanted to do like some sort of trial before the trade deadline happens to see if they see anything in there with a Ryan Ward, potentially that could be the case. The only complicated factor and the only reason why I would advise them not actually has nothing to do with the Dodgers organization and everything to do with Ryan Ward. If that happens and if they add him to the 40-man roster and they don't really have any sort of plans long-term for him, you could see him be in the same situation that a Hunter Fiducia is, where he's stuck at Oklahoma City and he's part of the major league roster and he's too good for them to designate for assignment, but there's no real room for him at the major league level. That's what I don't want to see, although that would present Ryan Ward with a potential opportunity at the big league level. But with Michael Conforto, I still think that he's going to get some time to be able to try to figure things out because of his track record, because of the investment that the Dodgers have made in him, and because of what he's done in the past. And he's not as far out from league average as a hitter. I know he's only hitting 170 something, but it's in close to 80 something WRC plus. So if he comes and has a couple good weeks like we saw a Max Muncy had, you could see his numbers jump up and they start to look a little bit, not just a little bit, a lot better than what they currently have. We just haven't seen that exactly yet for Michael Conforto. And this is perhaps a really good time for him to do it. Not just time-wise for the season, time-wise for him to get on track, but this is actually an important series long-term wise. I was listening to the game on the way home from South Bend yesterday, the start of the game, and then I turned on the game as I was falling asleep here in Michigan. And the Dodgers, this series with the Mets, has a potential to be a tie-breaking type of series between the two, because this is the last time that the Dodgers and the Mets are going to be playing against each other. The Mets took 2 out of 3 in New York. They took the first game, which means they were up 3-1 on the series. The team that has 4 wins is going to have the tiebreaker in a playoff bracket type of setting. And the Mets are a very good club. As BC had mentioned, the Dodgers had struggled a little bit with some of their pitching. They were last year 9th in ERA out of the 12 playoff teams and still won, but this year they're 22nd in ERA overall in Major League Baseball, in part because of some of the injuries that they have, but they've also seen some of their pitchers struggle a little bit. With the Mets, they're a very good club who has some really solid pitching and some good pieces offensively. And if both of these teams are going to win quite a bit, you could potentially see a scenario where the Dodgers and Mets are tied. And if the Dodgers don't take these next 2 games, well, home field advantage will be given to the New York Mets. And we know just how impactful Dodgers Stadium is. It's not just that. You also have the series against the Cardinals, who the Cardinals are actually playing really good baseball, which is disappointing because they've got some good, solid pitching. If you're looking for teams to root against only because their pitching that they could have available could help the Dodgers, they would be one of them. So you want to win that series, if nothing else, to try to get them a little bit closer to being out of contention, even though they're still a really solid club. And then you have a big series with this, and I believe it's in San Diego against the Padres. That's going to be a big series, all back to back to back. So for a player like Michael Conforto, you want to see him get going. This perhaps could be a really good stretch for him to get going because the Dodgers need to win a lot of these games. They're still working to get a lot of their pitchers back, and as much help offensively as they can get can really help offset some of the runs that they're going to give up.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And like as we mentioned earlier, this is their, to this point, the most challenging part of their season. Last year, is that I haven't looked far ahead, but last year, the last part of the year, like I said, the last series against the Padres. So, this is a very challenging time. The good thing about it is we mentioned all the other guys we mentioned. Conforto's probably putting pressure on himself because he's a major league hitter. He knows he's not hitting like he would like to, but he's hit at the bottom of the order. In other words, yes, you're a major league hitter, and but you're hitting the bottom of the order. The big dudes are, we want the bottom of the order. Early in the year, we were complaining about the bottom of the order. Everybody's under 200. The 7, 8, 9 was all under 200 before Conforto started playing regularly. So that's starting to come up with Pages and Muncy and that sort of thing. But, you want to see he's got an opportunity to maybe right the ship somewhat with him as he's working. I don't know the guy. I know he's a major leaguer. Every day he wakes up, he's trying to make himself better because that's the way you are when you're on the big league level. We're all very impressed by him, but there's always a 19-year-old down on the farm somewhere that wants your job and is very hungry. So, these guys, they don't get up there and rest on the laurels. If they do, they're not in the big leagues very long. And everything I can say about Michael Conforto, he's doing what it needs to do to try to get back to hitting what he's normally able and capable of doing. So this, as you mentioned, this would be a great time for that to happen. Everybody, I'm sure all the scouting reports are, nailed into all the big dogs up top there and some other guys. But so not that they're taking him for granted, but he's not number one in the game plan when you play the Dodgers.
No, he's not. And speaking of the game plan, the Dodgers do have a game tonight coming up in a little over an hour. We'll be starting at 7:10 Pacific time, 10:10 here on the East Coast. It will be Tony Gonsolin taking the mound for the Dodgers. And it's been a little bit of a split season for him thus far during his outings when he's been part of the Dodgers. So he returned at the very end of April, started a couple of games against the Marlins, had a game against the Diamondbacks as well, that went really well. So during his first 16 innings pitched, his first 3 games that he had, just gave up 5 runs during that time, did give up a pair of home runs, but the home run ball has been something that has really caught on for Tony Gonsolin as of late. Obviously, the last 3 appearances for him was against the Angels, again at New York, against the Mets, and then against the Yankees. And during that time period, he's gone, 15 innings, given up 13 earned runs during that stretch, and 6 home runs as well. For Tony Gonsolin, what are some of the keys for him, and do you think some of the most recent home run ball is just knocking off some of the rust of him being out for so long, or could it be something that might be a little bit concerning or something to keep an eye out for, especially with this Mets lineup? I mean, you have Francisco Lindor, who can hit for some power. Juan Soto can hit for a lot of power. Pete Alonso has a ton of power in his bat. Is this something to where it could be very much during this game upcoming a slugfest between the Dodgers and the Yankees based on the recent results with Tony Gonsolin?
Well, you probably know this better than I do. I saw a stat the other day. He's given up 8 or 9 home runs this year. That is the entire total of last year. Is that correct? On Gonsolin, I'm pretty sure what I saw was he'd given up his 8th or 9th home run. It had been a problem, as you just mentioned. And I think that's the most to give up all of last year. Maybe I didn't see that correctly, but so that gives you an idea. He's never been a problem for him in previous seasons, but it has been here the last few starts. So I'm going to attribute that. It's wishful thinking that we're trying to knock the rust off, getting back to where he was. And these guys have so much information. They got great coaches around them. They've got everything broke down. They've got information, video, everything you can imagine to look at, to see if there's a problem. What am I doing? Location, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you can, of course, a lot of times location, you just miss your spot. And that's always been a problem with pitchers, but you don't want to do that too often. And if you're doing it too often, there's probably something else going on there. So, I'm going to attribute that to him just knocking the rust off. And that's probably wishful thinking, like I said.
Yeah, no, with Tony Gonsolin, last year he was out for all of didn't pitch at all last year just with the injuries that he was dealing with. But dating back to the past couple of seasons, we're talking about some of the most home runs that he's given up. 2019, during his rookie year, gave up 4 home runs in 40 innings. And 2020, he gave up 2 in 46 and 2/3. 8 in 55 and 2/3 in 21, dropped it down to 11 and 130.1 innings, then 19 and 103, and 8 in 31 innings pitched. So this is the most home runs if you're talking about a per innings based basis. This is the most home runs that Tony Gonsolin has given up during this time period. It has been a little, at least concerning enough to be able to take note, which if you look at, and I was looking at a little bit at some of the StatCast pages for Tony Gonsolin and for some of the other pitchers on staff, leads to a little bit of concern just with the hard contact that he's giving up. Like you, I'm attributing that, at least right now, until I get a little bit of a larger sample size, more to a return from injury type of mindset. But this is something very important to keep in mind as we go forward, and something to watch for as we go forward, because you're looking for starters that you could potentially rely upon in high leverage impact type of games. Tony Gonsolin could be one of the pitchers, based on guys that are healthy. If the postseason were to start tomorrow, he would be one of the guys that would be taking the mound in a postseason type setting. And would you be completely comfortable? I think would depend on if these injuries, if these issues persist going forward for him. So that's going to be one of the things, is what does his execution look like? Obviously, with the 4 home runs he gave up against the Yankees, he turned that around, and maybe he found something during the later innings where he was able to get through, I believe it was 6 innings on Sunday Night Baseball against the Yankees, and was able to keep Friday, or I can't remember which game it was, Friday night. It was Friday night, because Yamamoto started the Sunday night game. Was able to keep the Dodgers in the game during the time that Tony Gonsolin went out there and was able to battle. Was he able to find something within that during the success that he has? Is something I'm going to be watching during his outing tonight.
Yeah, that'll be key. Yeah, if it continues tonight, where it looks like he's made some adjustments, made some improvements, that'll be something. I was more concerned with Tanner Scott than I was him, to be honest with you. And it was good to see him perform like he did last night, because that guy was unhittable before he got to the Dodgers, and then you're seeing the cheek and the armor there, but I think they'll work that out with him too. But yeah, hopefully Gonsolin will show continued improvement tonight in that, as far as his allowing the gopher ball.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. You're going to be watching a little bit of him, just looking at some of the usage of some of the bullpen. Actually, before we get into, we'll talk about the usage of some of the bullpen, then we'll address one more thing that could be something to watch going forward before we conclude the show. Just talking about some of the guys. If we can get this to actually load up. When I'm running these show, my computer, when I'm looking up some of the stuff, because I'm using the same computer that I'm running the show on, could be a little bit slow. As far as the use, as far as being able to load some of the pages and stuff. So we'll be able to get to this in just a second, courtesy of Fangraphs, which is what I'm using to be able to look at a lot of the usage of some of the pitchers and stuff, and can really help project some of the innings. So just looking at some guys that could potentially be available tonight, or guys that did not pitch during the game yesterday. The high leverage arm that did not get used yesterday was Jack Dreyer, or considering him high leverage, because if you consider your high leverage arms right now, Tanner Scott, Alex Vesia, Ben Casparius, and Jack Dreyer, he could be potentially somebody that's available. Anthony Bonda only had 3 pitches yesterday. He could be available. Jose Urena only had 6 pitches, so he could potentially be somebody that gets used. Ryan Loudis, Lou Trevino, all those guys could potentially be available during the game tonight. I wouldn't expect them to throw out Tanner Scott 3 games in a row, especially when he had success during the game yesterday, so that wouldn't be my anticipation. Perhaps they could stretch Alex Vesia and have him go back-to-back games, but I would anticipate no Tanner Scott, no Ben Casparius during the game tonight. As well as, and this is where we're transitioning to, it does not sound like Tommy Edman is going to be playing in the game today, and there has been some reports that Esteury Ruiz has a locker with the Dodgers. It is right now, based on the reports, a taxi squad situation. Esteury Ruiz got traded to the Dodgers during the course of the season, the very early parts of the season, for Carlos Duran, very talented pitching prospect, but the Dodgers acquired this outfielder from the Athletics, a little bit of big league experience. He has not been activated to be part of the Los Angeles Dodgers team as of right now, but it is something to notice. This is, I believe, the second game in a row that Tommy Edman is missing out, and especially during some big impact game type settings, it's something to at least be slightly to notice it a little bit, given what he's had to wrestle with and given that he spent time already on the injured list. And he is a very impactful player for this team when he's on the field and when he's healthy.
Oh, no doubt about it. Ever since they've gotten him, the postseason's off the charts, with Tommy, and he's a big part of play different positions. He's a coach's kid. He makes winning baseball plays, as we call them, moving runners, doing whatever it does to make plays. So that's very concerning. If there's something going on there, of course, sounds like there is, or if it's precautionary or there's something going on, either way, there's a concern there with him. So hopefully they'll get through that and figure out what's going on. And he's very important to the Dodgers organization.
He's incredibly important to the Dodgers organization, and it is a big series that they're going up, and if he could go out there, he would definitely do that. But also, The Dodgers keep in mind the long term. Their goal is not to win a game on June 4th. Their goal is to win games in October. And if they believe making sure that guys are healthy is going to give them the best opportunity to win in October, which I believe they are correct in that assumption, that is exactly what they are going to do. And they're going to do everything that they can to make sure that they have all the pieces needed to go out and win in October. They're going to be opportunistic when it comes up to the trade deadline, but they also want to see what exactly they're going to have, because you don't want to acquire too many guys at the trade deadline, and then all of a sudden you're in a situation where all your guys come back and healthy, and then it's we've got no choice but to option Ben Kasparius down to the minor leagues or Jack Dreyer down to the minor leagues. Probably not a wise decision based on the way that they are pitching, or you would want those guys that have had a lot of success to be at the big league level. But they will be opportunistic. They'll be advantageous about it. One last question before I talk a little bit about the schedule of what we're going to have going forward. What are some of the things that you're going to be looking for, not just with this series, not just with the game today, the series with the Mets, but also with the series coming up against the Cardinals, leading up to an in-division rivalry games against the San Diego Padres, who I believe are just a game back. So it's a very tight division stretch during one of the most, if not the most difficult part of the Dodgers schedule. What are some of the things that you're going to be looking out for today and going forward over the next week for the Dodgers?
Well, just the performance of the pitching staff. I think you're seeing the offense has been pretty effective. Not, we thought it'd be more dominating, but it's been effective. You've had some reasons why it hadn't been dominating, but at times it has been. It's still an outstanding offense. And so what I'm saying, what I'm looking for here, going to Busch Stadium's always tough. Even when the Cardinals suck, it's tough. They're a lot better team right now after you get through with this series and the Padres. But I think performance and the usage of the pitching, how moving forward, again, we're still in June. We're not ready to press the panic button yet or any of that stuff. But it will be interesting because these are quality teams back to back to back to back. There's really no breathers in the big leagues, but there kind of is some that aren't as good as others. Let's put it that way. There are major league players, but there are some that you can kind of catch your breath. You're not going to these next three series, so it just is what it is. And like you said, I haven't looked far ahead, but I know when this thing first started, as far as this stretch you're on right now, this is probably the most challenging part of their schedule up to this point for sure. And like you said, maybe for the rest of the season. But I'll be looking at just how the pitching staff moves during these three series. I think that's the most. It goes back to the same thing. That's priority one is going to be the pitching staff. So I think we all feel, regardless, the offense is going to continue to improve and get better, and it's going to be there when it counts.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right with that. It is an observation of where the pitching staff is, not just for Tony Gonsolin tonight. You want to see where he is coming back with injury, because you want to identify to see if he could be a guy that could be reliable in a postseason type of setting, or do you need to try to pivot to something if the home run ball persists with Tony Gonsolin. Mm-hmm. You want to look to see, because with this stretch, with there being a lot of games in a row, it's totally possible that they might be bringing up somebody from the minor leagues. Yep. The most likely guy would probably be, if this is just based off of where the schedule things lie, potentially a Justin Robleski within the next day or two. I don't think they've announced their pitching rotation yet, but given the rest that they want to give Yamamoto, you could potentially be seeing somebody like that come up from the minor leagues, and you could see a little bit of movement from the pitching staff. And I think the biggest thing that Dodgers fans can hope for is the guys like a Michael Kopech and a Kirby Yates come back and start to find their groove again at the back end of the bullpen, and you start seeing the pitching start to really perform and turn things around, as was mentioned in the chat, and we can do a little bit of deep dive in one of the future shows coming up. The pitching has not been to the level of where it needs to be. It hasn't been at the top of Major League Baseball, which is going to help this team win. You can win a lot of games with this offense, which they certainly have, and they certainly will continue to win a lot of games with the offense, but it becomes a lot more difficult to be able to do it that way. So seeing where the pitchers are at, seeing the continued evaluation of these guys to see who can be reliable and where they might need to do is going to continue to happen for this club. That's the biggest thing that I'm curious about with the club over the course of the next week or so. It's going to be very difficult to win a lot of these games, so you want to win as many as you possibly can. You hope to win the next 2 games in the Mets so that any sort of tiebreaker scenario, although you hope it doesn't come down to a tiebreaker with the Mets and the Dodgers, you hope the Dodgers are able to just win more games than the Mets, and then it ultimately doesn't matter. But stranger things can happen, and you want to win as many of these impactful games. And then obviously the Cardinals, very tough competition, but that series against the Padres obviously is a team that I think the Dodgers want to win. Padres fans really want to win that series too. That's going to be some fun baseball coming up.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. It just become, it's recent history, but quite a rivalry there. I mean, we kind of had a year or two there. The Diamondbacks were really good, and kind of got some bad bloods brewed up there. And of course, you've always got the Dodgers, Giants. That really never goes away. Some years it's more than others, but so the division itself is going to be a dogfight right to the end. And if you think about it, there's going to be somebody, a pretty good team, that's not even going to be in the playoffs. So the way if you look ahead, as far as the wild card, they could have both wild cards out of our division. Good chance of that. But even though there's some other teams in the running, so it's exciting. And that Padres series, leading up to that, it's going to be very tough, but it's going to be fun to watch. And like I said, I look at them like a little brother. They've never won a world championship. They're good enough to do it, but they got a chip on their shoulder, and they should have a chip on their shoulder, and that's okay. That's the way it is.
Yep, and you can poke fun of them a little bit and still have an immense amount of respect for the talent that they've had in the organization. And I think that's where you and I, we here at Dodgers Daily, have with the Padres is they have an insane amount of talent, and it's going to be a very tough series between the two. And we know just how badly both of these two teams want to win against each other, because this has been over the past couple of years, at least, not historically, which obviously is the Dodgers versus the Giants, but over the past couple of years, been the hot rivalry based because they've dealt and had big postseason series against each other. It's going to be intense competition between the two. Obviously, tonight the Dodgers have to focus on the Mets and do whatever they can to win that series. It's going to be good, fun, competitive baseball, and that's what you want to see. The Dodgers go out there, play competitively, and especially with the success that they continue to have with the amount of injuries that they've had to endure. As these guys get healthy, I think you can see this team start to get better and better and better, and that's what you really hope for. Just talking about schedule-wise for you guys, obviously, as we had mentioned at the top of the show, Casey is not on the show tonight. He's dealing with some sort of illness. Our prayers are with him. My prayers are with him. Coach's prayers are with him, as with all of you guys. Continue to be praying for Casey, and hope he will be back as soon as he possibly can. Until then, we're going to try to fill in with these shows as much as we possibly can. Just to let you know, my schedule this week, which I believe right now I'm the only one who has the ability to go live with all of the different settings and stuff that Casey had created. So I'm kind of the vessel for Dodgers Daily right now while Casey is out. The rest of this week, I will be out because I will be in South Bend, Indiana, watching the Great Lakes Loons, the high A affiliate of the Los Angeles Dodgers, in action. I was actually supposed to be there tonight. There wasn't supposed to be a show tonight. Surprise, there is a show. Game got rained out, so I was able to do this, and I'm grateful to be able to do this and to be able to talk with Coach tonight. No shows the rest of this week. I'll be back for my solo show on Monday. The only reason why I'm keeping it solo is because it is immediately after work on the East Coast during a 50-minute block that I have between after work and between other stuff that I have to do throughout the day. So I'll do that show on Monday. There should be, and I'm planning on doing 2 other shows throughout the week next week. I don't have exact dates on that. It actually probably will be dependent on when Coach could potentially do a show. If you want to do a show again next week, we also have Mark Watkins, another contributor here, part of the Dodgers Daily Network. Then I'm going to try to do some sort of live show with him as well and try to get as many of the contributors here at Dodgers Daily some time to be able to talk some Dodgers baseball. So then you guys, as fans and as listeners and as people that are part of this equally as much as we are, can have different perspectives be brought on. And Coach, it's been an absolute privilege to be able to interact with you, get to know you a little bit better. As we've been, I think the last time that we were on the show interacting together was back during the World Series celebration. I think that was that was a fun show. This one, not quite as fun, but it was a pretty fun show as well tonight.
That was a fun one. I've got iced tea in my Dodger cup tonight. I think that night I had something else in it, celebrating the Dodgers. But yeah, that's the last time we were on there together, and it's always great to be on with you. And it's better. I enjoyed tonight being able to learn a little bit more about you too, and spend a little bit more time with you. But looking forward to finishing off the Mets series and moving forward, and look forward to getting back on there with you and our great Dodger Dog network very soon. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, it's been absolutely awesome. For me, Austin Brubaker here at Dodgers Daily, I want to thank all of you guys for joining us here. Dodgers Dogs, part of the Dodgers Daily Network. As I stated, we will be back on Monday for another show. I will be back on Monday talking some more Dodgers baseball, recapping the series, the end of the series against the Mets, as well as the series against the Cardinals, and then talking a little bit about the upcoming series against the San Diego Padres. A lot of exciting action happening for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Your first place Los Angeles Dodgers, your defending World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers. It's going to be a fun time. We will be here as much as we possibly can. We can't thank you guys enough for being part of this venture with us. Until next time, though, thank you very much for joining us, and go Dodgers.